They said Bastogne would fall. They said the 101st Airborne would freeze, starve, and surrender. But in the middle of that frozen hell, Eisenhower said just one name. Patton. And history changed forever. The cold had teeth that winter, and it bit into everything: metal, flesh, and morale. Snow buried the Ardennes like a white grave, and in the center of it all, the 101st Airborne stood surrounded at Bastogne, outnumbered, outgunned, and running low on everything except courage. Inside a dim command tent miles away, General Dwight D. Eisenhower studied the map in silence. Bastogne was circled in red. German arrows closed in from every direction. Each mark on that map represented men who hadn't slept, men who fought with frozen hands and empty stomachs. An officer spoke carefully. "Sir, the weather is grounded. Roads are iced. The Germans believe the 101st will collapse within days." Eisenhower didn't look up. His jaw tightened. "They don't know American paratroopers," he said finally. "And they don't know what happens when you corner them." Another pause. Then a single name left his lips, heavy, deliberate. Patton. Some officers shifted uneasily. Everyone knew Patton's reputation: fast, aggressive, unstoppable, and reckless, some said. But Eisenhower knew better. He knew Patton didn't fight wars by waiting for permission from winter or from fear. "They say no army can pivot north in this weather," Eisenhower continued. "They say it can't be done in time." He looked around the tent now, eyes hard, voice firm. George Patton doesn't believe in can't. He believes in breaking through. Orders went out. The Third Army turned its nose toward Bastogne, engines roaring against the snow, tanks clawing through frozen roads the enemy thought impassable. Patton drove his men day and night, pushing steel and flesh beyond exhaustion. Then, at last, the radio crackled. "Sir, Third Army has made contact. The road to Bastogne is open." For a moment, Eisenhower said nothing. His shoulders lowered, just slightly. The 101st would live. He turned to his staff. "Remember this," Eisenhower said. "Wars are not won by holding ground alone. They are won by refusing to abandon our own." He looked back at the map, now changing forever. Patton didn't just save Bastogne, he added. He saved the spirit of this army. Outside, the snow kept falling. But in Bastogne, American soldiers heard the sound of engines, and knew they were no longer alone. Dawn crept slowly over the Ardennes, pale and cold, as if the sun itself hesitated to look upon what the war had done. Inside Allied headquarters, exhaustion hung heavier than smoke. Men stood with hollow eyes, uniforms stiff with days of tension and sleepless nights. All waited for one thing: news from Bastogne. Then the radio came alive. Static. A pause. And then the words everyone had prayed for. "Contact established. Third Army elements have reached Bastogne." For a heartbeat, the room stood frozen. Then Eisenhower closed his eyes. Not in triumph, but in relief. The kind of relief only a commander feels when thousands of lives are pulled back from the edge of extinction. Patton had arrived. Against ice-choked roads and German armor dug deep into the forests, Patton had driven north with ruthless speed. His tanks tore through the snow like iron beasts. Infantry followed, boots bleeding, lungs burning, but moving forward because stopping meant failure, and failure meant the death of the 101st Airborne. Eisenhower opened his eyes and turned to the map. The red circle around Bastogne no longer looked like a coffin. It looked like a stand. "They held," Eisenhower said quietly. "They held when the world expected them to break." An officer spoke with awe. "Sir, the Germans are pulling back. They didn't expect a counterattack. This fast." Eisenhower nodded. "They never do when Patton is involved." He straightened, his voice firm now, carrying the weight of command and history. "Let it be known," he said, "that the men of the 101st Airborne did not ask to be rescued. They asked only for ammunition and time." He paused, then continued. "And George Patton gave them both." Eisenhower walked slowly across the room. "This was more than a relief operation," he said. "This was a message, to our enemies and to ourselves. That no American unit fights alone. That when surrounded, we do not surrender. We strike back." Outside, the sky began to clear. For the first time in days, Allied aircraft prepared to fly. Supplies would fall from the sky. Wounded men would live. Eisenhower stopped at the tent entrance, looking toward the distant front. "History will speak of Bastogne," he said. Not as a moment of desperation, but as a declaration of resolve. And somewhere beyond the frozen forests, the men of the 101st Airborne heard the rumble of American tanks, and knew the war had turned in their favor. Eisenhower knew this truth. Leaders don't just give orders. They carry the weight of every life.